Amsterdam can give you maybe a bit of a skewed picture of what is going on. We are a very small country and we are extremely densely populated. I would say yes, maybe at first glance it doesn't look as bad as it is maybe in London or in Paris, but it's a matter of time. I think we're sitting on a ticking time bomb.
So Eva, you said something funny to me, or at least seemed funny to me a minute ago, which is that you got into this thing a couple of years ago and you didn't realize that you'd never be able to get out, which I have heard that sentiment from many people who have even sat in that chair in the last 2 or 3 days. For the people that don't know you, could you very briefly talk about how you got involved in this whole thing, and then we'll talk about the issues of the day.
Yeah, this whole mess. How did I get myself in this position? Well, I'm 27. I'm Dutch, so my name is Eva Vlaardingerbroek. The last name is always a tough one for.
We're gonna spell it properly.
Yeah, thank you. It's a tough one even for the Dutch. I need to get married, for multiple reasons, but that's definitely one of them. Would make my life easier. I do political commentary, mostly for an international audience right now, because not exactly liked very much, let's just say it that way, in my home country, especially not by the legacy media and the establishment. I'm a lawyer. I got started almost in it was almost a coincidence. I was in university as a law student, and this was during the refugee crisis in Europe, so 2014-15, and I was quite critical of the general policies in Europe, Merkel's idea of just opening the borders without any stop or limitation to it, basically. And I said, well, guys, maybe this is not a great idea, and that got me in trouble with my professors, with my fellow students, and I spoke to a journalist about it one time at an event, and he's like, would you want to tell your story about the left-wing hegemony at the university and how you feel like academic freedom isn't really a thing anymore? And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
I will change my life overnight.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And then I came to realize very quickly that most of the doors that I thought were open to me as a young law student had closed, and that there was really no way back, and only one way that was forward. So I continued to speak out, and I did so first on a national level. I had a brief story in Dutch politics, which was a straight up disaster, and then I figured, no, I'm going to go independent and take it to a higher level and do my commentary in English. So that's kind of how that happened.
So for people that don't know that much about Holland, and I just mentioned to you, I've been there many times. I have family there. I really love the culture, and in some ways, at least Amsterdam to me seems like a place where some coexistence has worked better maybe than a little bit of what I'm seeing here in London or Paris, for example. I'm not totally sure you're agreeing with me, and that's just fine. If not, that's what I can tell you as a tourist. But sure. Feel free to offer the counter. The reason I bring it up is because I don't think most people have a sense of what's going on in Holland. They think about Amsterdam and they think about coffee shops.
Right.
What would you want people to know about sort of the makeup of Holland, and I guess maybe the geography and where it sort of sits within what's going on across Europe right now?
Sure. Well, I mean, you're not wrong. If you go to Amsterdam, it seems, especially if you're in the city center, that
maybe it's because everyone's stoned.
Or you were, no.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. No, it's quite a segregated city. So it's ruled by the left and a lot of champagne socialists. So the housing prices are extremely high, and so nobody really can afford to live in the city center, and that pushes usually the immigrants out.
Yeah.
And so we have, just like in French cities and stuff, we have suburbs that are highly dominated by migrant groups, especially from non-Western countries. Because, well, just like everywhere in Europe, most of the immigrants that we get are from the Middle East or from Africa, North Africa, but also Sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of Muslim immigrants come to Europe. So, it's obviously a difference between our immigration influx in that sense and the immigrants that you guys have coming in through the southern border. So Amsterdam can give you maybe a bit of a skewed picture of what is going on. We are a very small country and we are extremely densely populated. I would say yes, maybe at first glance it doesn't look as bad as it is maybe in London or in Paris, but it's a matter of time. I think we're sitting on a ticking time bomb, and we have open borders, obviously, within the European Union, so people can travel freely, which people really like because you don't have to show your passport, the border going from the Netherlands to Belgium. But that also means that everybody who comes in anywhere within the EU can travel freely. So in a way, you know, we already don't have national sovereignty anymore.
Right.
So
I remember the first time I was there, I think it was in 1997, and I took a train from Amsterdam to Rome, and I think you basically have to go through 4 or 5 countries: Belgium, Luxembourg, maybe something else on the way to Italy. I mean, you're basically within 20 hours in 4 different countries, and I suppose at any point you could hop off and live whatever life you want to live, which is a bizarre notion.
And it happens, right? So a lot of the migrants that come in through, for example, through Italy, they go to Lampedusa first. I'm sure you've seen the footage recently. You know, it's being swarmed. But usually people don't stay there. Same thing with Eastern Europe. They don't stay there because the social benefits are better in Northwestern European countries. So they all come to Germany, to the Netherlands, to Sweden, Norway, you know, because we're... the nice liberal places, you know, that offer the softest landing, so to say.
So what is going on with the politics of Holland? You know, obviously we covered it a little bit, but probably should have done much more. And I should have you on again to discuss it. What's going on with the farmers there, but also COVID stuff. Like, it seems like it's like a big mix of things. And also, you guys are not far into political violence. I mean, Theo van Gogh was murdered on the street in Amsterdam 25 years ago, and they pinned a note on his body, you know, that they were going to come after Ayaan Hirsi next.
Yes.
Of course, you know, put her on the map in a sort of unfortunate way. But yeah, what's like a general state of the political?
Yeah, it's actually, it's good that you bring that up, because I feel like a lot of the you know, the topics that we talk about with immigration and with the climate activism and all of that, we're talking about it now and how bad things are now. But you're right. This was in 2001 and 2002. We had 2 big political murders in the Netherlands. One was Theo van Gogh. Yeah. He was stabbed in broad daylight by an Islamist. And the year after that, we had Pim Fortuyn, a conservative politician who would have otherwise, if he hadn't been murdered, would have become the prime minister of the Netherlands. And he was a very flamboyant but strong intellectual conservative. And he got shot by a climate activist. And so we're talking 2001.
This one. That's so bizarre.
Yeah, 2001, 2002, right? So it's not as if the problems that we're dealing with now are you know, recent. It's been going on for 20 years and nothing has changed since, and things have just basically gotten worse. We've been ruled for 30 years now by one specific party, the VVD, always in a coalition format, because we don't have a 2-party system. We have tons of parties. But yeah, by the same neoliberal, you know, just the only thing that they care about is free market and open borders. Free market goes hand in hand oftentimes, and they've ruled with the left, and the policies have just been, well, in terms of immigration, detrimental, but agriculture is now under heavy attack.
Yeah, can you talk about what's going on there for a little bit?
No, yeah, sure, yeah. I've been very involved in the fight for the Dutch farmers, kind of accidentally as well, how that happened. But
these things are all connected. That's how it happened.
Yes, yeah. So the Dutch farmers, we have a lot of agriculture in the Netherlands. We're a small country, but more than 50% of the land is owned by farmers. We're the 2nd largest exporter of agricultural products in the world, right after the US, which is quite, you know, a large position to have as such a tiny country. And we're super good at it. You know, you have family in the Netherlands, and you probably know that this is something that's in our blood. It's a century old.
I've seen all the tulip fields.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so we're really good at that. And now suddenly our government has decided that we have a nitrogen crisis, and that more than 30% of all of the farms need to go because it's bad for the climate. And it doesn't make any sense. You know, technically, they don't even say it's bad for the climate. They say it's bad for the state of the Dutch nature, which is funny, you know, because everybody's been to the Netherlands.
Generally thought of as good for nature.
Right. And it's weird also to think that the people who own that land, you know, would want to see it polluted or see it go bad. You know, they obviously need it to be fertile and good soil. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in business. So it's the whole notion is just, I think it's all predicated on a lie, and that in essence, it's just a way for the Dutch government to take land away from citizens. which they desperately need, and they've admitted to that for new houses, because we have a ever-growing population as a result of mass migration, and they don't know where to leave those people.
Is there any political will? I mean, bringing it back to migration, since that's sort of been the theme here. I love it. I mean, is there any political will now to reverse some of this stuff?
Well, when it's about migration, people talk about it a lot, but I feel like, everywhere in the Western world, in that sense, we're at an impasse, because we still have our borders wide open, and then people are talking about, well, we need to start remigration, we need to start sending people back home. But we're all part of all of these universal declarations of human rights. And then you have a whole apparatus of lawyers, that say, well, you can't do that because you're part of this treaty and that treaty, and it would be a violation of their human rights to go and think about remigration. So we're just stuck, Nothing ever really happens, and I feel like you first need to close the doors, close the gates, because we have a saying that translates weirdly to English, but a Dutch saying that goes something along the lines of, well, you can mop the floor, but if the tap is still open, it's not really going to do that much. Yeah. And I feel like that's what's happening with immigration. You can start talking about remigration, but if everybody's still coming in through the back door, then it doesn't really make any sense.
Are you, this is sort of how I've ended a lot of these interviews, are you hopeful not only for your country, but the West as a whole? Do you sense that maybe the events of the last couple of weeks have kind of broken some people out of their slumber? That seems to be a bit of a theme here. Not a solution, but at least an initial salvo, maybe?
Right, yeah. Well, I hope so. I feel like it's hard to deny reality. When you hear 100,000 people out on the street who are very clearly not just there, to support maybe Palestine, but that there's this sort of cultural and even ethnic component to the stance that they're taking. And it becomes so visible. I hope that even the sleeping masses are like, oh, okay, wait a second. But yeah, I mean, in a way, too little, too late, right? It's the enemy isn't at the gate, they're in.
They're in the bedroom.
They're in, yeah. So it's am I hopeful? Well, my answer to that's always yes, because you have to be. Otherwise, we're just gonna sit back and do nothing. I'm also being realistic, though. The numbers don't look good. The numbers really don't look good, and unless there is some sort of intense, public revolt, I guess, and then obviously in peaceful ways, against the political establishment, I don't think that anything is going to change. So people really do need to, start voting for the right parties, the ones that they've smeared as far right for the longest time. And I think now it's a question of whether or not you want a future, not about, am I afraid to be maybe called far right or a Nazi or a racist or whatnot. It's like, no, those terms shouldn't hold any, value anymore coming from the people on the left who've allowed all of this to happen. So let's fight.
If you're looking for more enlightening conversations about international issues, check out our international playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.